Good morning, guys. Today you're going to be learning how to multiply fractions. Remember, you can do anything with fractions. Fractions are fair and fractions are fun. You did this last year, so don't stress out. So these are your Google Slides for today. So I'm going to go through just as if I were in class with you today to step through how to do some problems. Okay? The first thing we're going to look at is 4 times 1/3. Remember, I can look at 1 out of 3 or 1 divided by 3. That should be a review from the last couple of weeks that you have covered in math. So therefore, I have the multiplication equation 4 times 1/3. The first thing I'm going to do is if I have a whole number, in order for me to multiply it by a fraction, I have to turn it into a fraction. Well, before you start, how do I turn a whole number into a fraction? Stop and think about what you learned last year. How would you turn that whole number into a fraction? If you said put a 1 as my denominator, you are correct. Let me explain why. If I have 4 and I divide it by 1, what do I get? The answer is 4. So therefore, this number of 4, the value of it has never changed. So anytime I have a whole number, I can turn it into a fraction by putting a denominator of 1. So now that I have 4 times 1/3 with a denominator of 1 under my whole number, I'm ready to multiply. And guess what? This is so much more simple than adding or subtracting because you don't have to find a common denominator. So therefore, I'm going to start and I'm going to multiply straight across. 4 times 1 is 4. Okay? Then 1 times 3 is 3. So therefore, what is my answer? 4/3 is my answer. The slides make you do it in an extended way, but that is the shortest way to do it. Let's look at another one on this slide. Let's do 3 times 1/2. How do I turn 3 into a fraction? You are correct. Put it over 1. Remember, that 1 does not change the value. I'm set to multiply straight across. I multiply my numerators and I multiply my denominators by my denominators. 3 times 1 is 3. That's supposed to be a 3. 1 times 2 is 2. Now that we've multiplied it, I want you to look back. Can either one of these fractions be simplified? I know that you have both of these answers, but you are expected to simplify. So let's simplify this one. How many times will 3 go into 4? The answer is 1. I keep the denominator of 3. If I have 4 parts here, how many parts do I have to have over here? 4. So I say 1 times 3 is 3. Plus what will give me 4? 1. I want you to try simplifying 3 out of 2 before we move on. All right, so 2 will go into 3 one time. I keep my denominator of 2. I have 3 total parts over here, so I want 3 total parts over here. I'm going to multiply. 1 times 2 is 2. Plus what will give me 3? 1. So therefore, 3 times 1/2 is 3/2, or 1 and 1/2. All right, we're going to move on to our next slide. The computer's being a little stubborn today, but we're going to look at it in this way. Let's look right here at this one. How many groups do you see here? Remember, each portion of the rectangle is a group. I see 3 groups of 2/3. Well, how do I know that it's 2/3? What's your fraction there? 2/3. So therefore, what equation? I'm going to move that equation there, and then I would solve it just like before. Let's do one more for solving purposes to help you out. Okay, so now I'm almost ready to multiply. I'm going to turn this into a fraction by putting a 1. I'm going to multiply straight across. 3 times 2 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. Do you see 6/3? That is correct. But as a 5th grader in Miss Wallace's class, do I expect you to simplify that? The answer is yes. How many times will 3 go into 6? If you said 2, you are correct. Now, all of this work right here should be shown in your math journal. Please make sure you do that because, again, just like before with fractions, if you don't, it is a challenge. Let's move to our next slide. Okay, this is the same thing as the slide before. You're looking at how many groups you have. So right here, how many groups do I have? 4 is correct. And then each group has how much in it? 3/10. So you'll fill it in by typing. You will be completing this as well. Okay, so right here, think about 1/4 of 12. Again, you can multiply straight across, or you could count 1/4 of this. There are 12 circles in this particular array, and then this area right here that I bring down the mouse on is 1/4. How do I know that? Because there are 4 parts, 1/4. Well, how many circles are in there? If you said 3, 3 is correct. Now let's look at 2/4. So we're going to look at, I'm going to mark it for you. Just don't like you not being able to see. We're going to look at these two. How many circles do you see in there? If you said 6, you are correct. Now let's look at 3/4 of 12. What is 3/4 times 12? Again, remember you can multiply this by changing it into a fraction of 1. Or I can simply count here, 3, 6, 9. This way, counting is a little more efficient. Always remember, of means to multiply. Okay, moving right on down to your next slide. You're doing the same practice skill here, and remember, what slides you finish in class means less homework for you tonight. Again, you've seen this. It's coming back to practice. Let's look at the very bottom one. I'm going to bring it back to this screen to be able to help you. And let's look right down here at the bottom. I have 8/9 times 2. What do I have to do here to turn that 2 into a fraction? You're correct if you said put it over 1. 8 times 2 is 16. Well, let me back up a minute and show you what the slide's expecting. It's expecting you to say 8 times 2, but this is where I expect you to put it in your math journal, just as I'm doing on the screen. 9 times 1 is 9. So then I simplify it. How many times will 9 go into 16? 1 is correct. What is my denominator? 9. If my denominator is 9 on the left side, it's 9 on the right side. 1 times 9 is 9. Well, what do I have to add to 9 to get those 16 parts? If you said 7, you are correct. Are you starting to get the hang of it? I think you are. You can do this, guys. I got faith in you. All right. On slide 8, it's the same thing. Slide 9, same thing. You can do your sticks if you choose. That's your choice. My main purpose that I want you to practice is in that math journal, just because that practice is going to make perfect. Remember, Wallace's law says to simplify, but if the simplified answer is not down here, make sure you put the unsimplified answer. Okay, here are some word problems. You will notice in the announcements I said, please make sure you look for keywords. If I were you, I would jot those keywords down to help. Remember, you wrote these down in your math journal earlier in the year. You are able to do this, okay? So you've got this. I got faith in you. Show me what you know. Good luck, guys.